Welcome to News Wrap Local. I'm your host, Justin Chapman. Thanks for being here. After providing a few brief updates on this month's local stories, we'll speak with our guest, Cynthia Kurtz, a former Pasadena city manager who is filling in as interim city manager while the city looks for a permanent replacement to Steve Mermell, who recently retired. But before we get started, let's check out these Pasadena media news briefs.
According to a city staff report, seismic work on Pasadena's Central Library will take almost 2 years to complete. A structural assessment revealed that most of the building consists of unreinforced masonry. The city was forced to close the library after it was discovered a seismic retrofit and restoration was needed to meet life safety requirements. The Pasadena City Council received a status report on the Pasadena Central Library and heard discussions on plans for seismic upgrades on Monday, November 29th. KPFF Consulting Engineers performed an assessment of the building's condition and its various systems. Using the information compiled by KPFF, city staff has issued a request for proposal to select a qualified design team to further refine the analysis, prepare an environmental report, develop options for retrofit, and refine budgetary estimates. Although the Central Library is currently closed, it is supported by 9 neighborhood branch libraries that are open and continue to offer in-person services. The city of Pasadena and lawyers representing Anthony McClain's children reached a $7.5 million settlement. According to the settlement, the children will receive $2.5 million each. In a statement, the city said the settlement was not an admission of guilt or wrongdoing. The settlement remains to be approved by the court, and the city still faces 2 other lawsuits arising from the shooting. McClain was shot to death by a Pasadena police officer during a traffic stop in August 2020. The car in which McClain was riding was pulled over by police on North Raymond Avenue near La Pintoresca Park on August 15th, about 8 p.m., for failing to display a front license plate. After the driver and McClain were asked to exit the vehicle, McClain ran from the officers, who claimed to have seen him throw a gun. McClain's family members have argued that the shooting was not justified. The Tournament of Roses and Clear have announced a partnership to streamline proof of vaccination using Clear's Health Pass technology. All 2022 Rose Bowl game attendees will be able to use the free Clear app and Health Pass feature to securely and easily show proof of vaccination or a negative test result. Clear's Health Pass connects a person's verified identity to proof of vaccination and test results. There are multiple ways to add proof of vaccination, including smart QR codes linked to Clear's network of pharmacies and providers, or directly uploading your CDC card and vaccination information. Test results can even be linked directly from Clear's nationwide network of providers. David Eads, CEO and Executive Director of the Tournament of Roses, said, "Clear's experience working with major events and sporting venues is a great fit for the Rose Bowl game. Their Health Pass technology will help fans of the granddaddy of them all enjoy their game day experience, and we are thrilled to be partnering with them."
Well, we made it through another year. We launched this show in April of this year. For those who have watched the show, thank you for coming on the journey with me. We've broken some news here on News Wrap Local. We've been a place where Pasadenans can catch up on the top stories of each month, and we've had some informative conversations with the movers and shakers that make the city what it is. I look forward to continuing to bring you the latest on Pasadena news and politics in 2022. Today, we'll do a shortened version of our regular lightning round, and then we'll take a look at the biggest stories of the year. Let's turn first to our lightning round of news updates. 1. City Council approved an emergency ordinance in response to the state's SB 9, which allows property owners to build multiple dwellings on single-family zone parcels. City officials say SB 9 takes away local control and will ultimately destroy single-family zoning, while supporters of the bill say it will help alleviate the state's affordable housing crisis. The city's ordinance stipulates that any development undertaken pursuant to SB 9 will be subject to regulation intended to address its environmental and land use impacts. What will that mean in practice? We need to see some more details on that. 2, volunteers are needed for the annual homeless count, which will take place the night of January 25th and the morning of January 26, 2022. Volunteers will be sent in teams to an assigned zone to count and administer a survey to Pasadenans experiencing homelessness and also distribute hygiene kits. The homeless count provides meaningful data to further the city's understanding of the local homeless population and to inform resource allocation for services and programs throughout the year. Learn more at pasadenapartnership.org. 3, the Human Relations Commission delayed approval of proposed commemorative plaques to be installed in Old Pasadena's Mills Place alleyway that describes an incident at that spot in 1885 in which a white mob set fire to a Chinese laundry and threatened Pasadena's Chinese residents in a fit of racist rage. Commissioners will take more time to review the plaque's location and edit the language and return to the matter at their next meeting in January. 4, longtime Pasadena Unified School District Board member Dr. Elizabeth Pomeroy was unanimously approved as president of the PUSD Board of Education, replacing Scott Phelps. Pomeroy has been a teacher at middle schools, high schools, and universities, including 10 years at Pasadena City College. She is someone who wears many hats: indie publisher, city historian, college professor, and local politician. As far back as 2013, when I interviewed her for Pasadena Weekly, she recognized that school boards are especially prone to political hostility and rancor, which is even more the case nowadays. And her philosophy has always been to stay out of the fray. And 5, I'm sad to report that Jan Suhu and Dolores Hickenbottom, both longtime local activists, have died. Jan was instrumental in the fight against the 710 freeway extension for decades, and Dolores was a champion of women's rights and civil rights and fought to integrate PUSD schools. Rest in peace, Jan and Dolores. Let's look now at the 5 biggest stories of the year. 1, the COVID-19 pandemic continued to impact all of our lives. We lost 368 Pasadenans to this virus. Vaccines brought a semblance of normalcy for many, but not for everyone. Variants like Delta and Omicron delayed a full recovery, and the first case of Omicron has been confirmed in a Pasadena resident. Here's to 2022 being the year of that full recovery. 88.4% of Pasadenans have been fully vaccinated. Let it not be said that Pasadenans are not doing their part. 2, the city's redistricting task force reviewed the demographic data from the 2010 census, held a number of hearings, and submitted its recommendation to the city council to shift about 2,600 residents from one council district to another, which the council has approved. However, some are saying that the decision not to form a central downtown district is leaving residents there without adequate representation and disenfranchising Latinos. City officials counter by pointing to a diverse council and the notion that consolidating downtown into one district would be prohibitively disruptive. 3, in May, a structural assessment found that the iconic Pasadena Central Library building would be unsafe in an earthquake due to unreinforced masonry. The library, which was built in 1925, was immediately shut down. The seismic upgrade work will take several years to complete and cost at least $111 million. 4, Police Chief John Perez, City Manager Steve Mermel, and several other department heads and second and third tier managers at the city announced their retirements or resignations. This has resulted in a loss of more than a century worth of institutional knowledge, throwing the city into a tumultuous transitional period. The City Council faces a series of critical personnel decisions over the next several months. And 5, Pasadena resident and then PCC student Sirhan Sirhan, who was convicted of assassinating Senator Bobby Kennedy at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles in 1968, plans to live with his brother here in Pasadena if he gets paroled and released. A 2-member parole board recommended his release in August, and that decision is still being reviewed by the full parole board before final approval is decided by California Governor Gavin Newsom by late January 2022. Therefore, in 2022, keep an eye on those stories: the Sirhan Sirhan decision, the city's high-profile personnel picks, and a number of developments that could have far-reaching implications, such as the project that would shut down the Laemmle Playhouse 7 Theater. What's the future, if any, of movie theaters in Pasadena? In the meantime, it should be a slow news month during the holiday season. The next city council meeting isn't until January 10th. So take this time to slow down, spend time with your family, recharge, and above all, be safe. Let's patch in our guest, interim city manager for the city of Pasadena, Cynthia Kurtz. Ms. Kurtz, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, I'm honored to have been asked. Thank you.
Cynthia Kurtz, of course, previously served as city manager of Pasadena from 1998 to 2008. She has also worked as the interim city manager for the cities of Covina and Santa Ana, as well as the chief operating officer of River LA. She served as president of the San Gabriel Valley Economic Partnership and currently serves as vice chair of the Metropolitan Water District. She was selected by Pasadena City Council to serve as interim city manager after previous city manager, Stephen Ramel, announced his retirement, which was effective December 2nd. So Cynthia, you've done this role before. What's different this round versus the last time you did it? How has the city changed, or is it like riding a bike?
No, there's no riding a bike. I think in the last 2 years, things have changed dramatically in all of our lives, in our homes, the way businesses operate, and certainly what government does and the way government operates. Life's more complex, and what I find of the issues here at City Hall, they are far more complex than they were 13 years ago when I was previously serving as a city manager. And what we're talking about, working towards, is finding willing partners to help us find resolutions to terribly complex issues that are facing all of us today.
Mm-hmm. And, there's been, more than a century worth of institutional knowledge that has left the city recently. Do you know why so many positions or people are leaving the city right now? Is it just a coincidence, or is there something else?
So we're losing a lot of people, and yes, there's a lot of history walking out the door. I had the exact same question that you just asked me myself, and so I called some of my now colleagues in other cities, and I called some search companies, and I called some people I know that work at just placing people in positions in government, and I got the same answer everywhere. It is happening throughout local government, throughout state government, throughout businesses and industries across the board. To some extent, people are tired because it's been a tough 2 years. To some extent, people have lost family and friends to COVID, who feel they just need to change their life and need to do something different, take a new path. To some extent, people have decided they're going to go their own way and start businesses themselves. Lots of small businesses starting all over. So I don't think it's anything that's at all representative of something in City Hall or what's going on here. We are part of a much bigger, I guess I would say, problem of really trying to keep talented people and find talented people to work. I would add, though, that as much as it is disappointing to see so many of our executive people making a change, the young talent that I've found here in the city is just extraordinary. Every department has had people who have stepped up to fill in and eagerly committed to what they're doing. And so I think ultimately, as we work through this transition, we will end up being better and stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what are the city's priorities during this period of transition?
So I'll talk to you about what I think the priorities are. I don't want to represent this as what the council is saying the priorities are and what they are asking me and the departments to work towards, because I'm still learning that. Mm-hmm. But I would say that just primarily every city's first and foremost goal needs to be fiscal stability. You're not going to be able to do anything if you're in a position of bankruptcy or insolvency. And in Pasadena, through good fiscal planning and decisions made by the city council, they really have come through the pandemic financially in much better shape than one would have anticipated 18 months ago, when we were seeing revenues on every major funding source just plummet. I really have to acknowledge Steve Ramel here because he is a financial wizard. The way he handled expanding programs, changing services and still keeping the budget sound and stable, I think was nothing less than a miracle. I think the other thing that I hear most from the community and from the council that we need to work on is the issues with violence in the city. Now we are seeing upticks in crime across the board in lots of cities, but we have had awful violence in the city. The number of guns that the police officers find every day, some registered, many ghost guns, is just astonishing. And the result of that, of course, is we have children that have died in the city. Even recently, we have shootings in our parks. We can have the most beautiful buildings in the world. We can have all the trees that one would want. We can have the smoothest streets in the world. We can have great quality water. And if people who live here and work here and visit here don't feel safe, then we're not a great city. And we have to get ahead of that, and we have to find ways. It's not just enforcement. I think Councilmember Rivas said it well. We are not going to enforce our way out of this problem. We need to look at prevention and intervention. We need to look at the root causes of our violence. But it is something that we absolutely have to focus on. And if I had to add one more, I think I would say the Rose Bowl, which is really has to do with financial stability as well. Large venues were devastated during the pandemic. And of course, we have some new competition in Southern California, some very, very shiny big stadiums that people are attracted to. But we are the best known small city in the world. And to a great extent, that is the Rose Bowl and the Tournament of Roses. That's very good for Pasadena. That underpins our economic development programs, our tourism programs, because people want to come to Pasadena. It is a place. It's not just one place among many. And so I'm hoping that we can find the right path to bring the Rose Bowl back to a stable place and keep that wonderful stadium alive.
Right. And so after your role is over, what kind of, in terms of the permanent city manager, what kind of city manager does Pasadena need right now? And where is the process, the search for that role? What's the status of that?
Well, I don't want to pre-guess what the community will say, because I am sure that the city council, as part of their process in finding the next manager, will ask community involvement, will ask what kind of characteristics and skills do you see that are necessary to lead this community into the future. But if I had to just make a statement, as you've asked me to, about what I see, I'd say it needs to be an experienced individual who brings people together and brings new people into the conversation. Sometimes I think we keep talking to the same people over and over again. And that's great to have people really engaged and they have a knowledge of what we do. But our city is growing. We have new residents, we have new businesses. We need to reach out to them and get new ideas on where we go forward. As far as the status, we have prepared an request for proposal at the council's direction to find a search company. That has already been released, and we have asked for proposals back from qualified firms by December 30th. Then we will go through those in the city manager's office and take them to the city council sometime in early January. It will be the city council that actually selects the search company as well as the city manager themselves. And then once we have a search company on board, what we were asking that search company is to lay out a process, lay out a schedule, tell us, how they would handle the recruitment, and that we very much want that process to include the community. Where is the right place to bring the community in to be involved in this? And then after we have selected the search company, then we will go through the process of listening to what we need in the next city manager, preparing a brochure, releasing it, getting it into the right places for qualified applicants to see it, and beginning to accept applications. I think it's probably about a 6-month process once we have the search company selected and on board, till we're able to actually have the council make that final decision on who they would like to be the city manager.
And the redistricting task force just has submitted its recommendations. There will be about 2,600 residents who will be moved to another district, so minimal impact. But the report warns that there are major changes coming, including the acquisition and development of the 710 freeway stub, increased housing created by the Parsons Project, and new state laws, factoring in recent undercounts in Northwest Pasadena and the growing sentiment for consolidation of council representation in the downtown central district area. So what does the city need to start doing to prepare for those coming changes?
So I think that probably the main focus there, the biggest growth will be in the 710 area, the potential growth in the 710. Right now, what our instructions are from the council, and I think very appropriately so, is we need to concentrate on the relinquishment itself. It is not a fait accompli that the city would actually control that property. And if we start talking about how we're going to use it and what's going to be there, and whether it all be housing or all be open space or a mix of different things, we will end up losing the focus on, we don't want someone else to control it. We want to be the entity, this community, not City Hall, wants to be the entity that controls that and does the land use planning. So right now we're focused on just making sure the relinquishment occurs. And after that, we will start a major process. I mean, again, that's where we can bring in those people that aren't engaged in government yet to help us do the land use plan of what best works for that. The undercount problem is one that's always, it's always an issue, and it inevitably happens in parts of communities across the board that are of lower economic means. I don't have a solution. I'm not going to tell you how we're going to approach that, but it's something that needs to be approached, because not just here. I mean, I think that one of the biggest problems in society is the wealth gap that keeps getting bigger and bigger. And the undercount contributes to that. And we have to fix the little things like undercounts and get people voting and helping, being engaged in government and being engaged in the community if we're going to equalize our wages, look at our social problems, and ultimately, hopefully, deal with the wealth gap that could be incredibly destructive if we let it to just continue to grow.
And on the subject of affordable housing, the city has been opposed to some recent state laws, such as SB 9, that limit local control of development and housing. What does the city's new ordinance do that the council is considering about multiple dwellings on single family lots?
So the ordinance that the council has had first reading on and will have second reading at their next council meeting, it simply creates development standards that are consistent with the development standards we have for every other piece of property in Pasadena. It doesn't add new requirements, onerous requirements onto any property that is considering using SB 9 as the way to develop a property. It's just consistency for to make sure that we continue to grow in the way our standards have allowed us to grow. It's actually rather benign in a sense, and it is certainly not intended, as some have tried to imply, to undermine SB 9. It is the state law. We do not like the state zoning local property. We think we're doing a good job with affordable housing, and we're going to try to increase affordable housing, and they should let us do it the way it works for us. But we will certainly meet the rules of the state as they are approved.
Gotcha. And then finally, very briefly, is there a status update on the search for the new police chief who is also retiring?
No, we have not started that yet. I intend for all of the executive positions to start recruitments, but not to not fill any of them on a regular basis, only on an interim basis. The next city manager needs to build his or her team. That's one of the key points in that person being able to really work with the whole city and get everything moving forward. And so we'll start the recruitments, but final decisions will be made with the next manager's appointment.
Gotcha. Well, Cynthia Kurtz, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to provide us an update on the city's priorities, and I wish you the best of luck in this challenging time.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care. Before we go, here's this month in Pasadena history. It was this month in 1940 when the Arroyo Seco Parkway officially opened to traffic. According to KCET, it was, quote, an occasion celebrated with parades and proclamations, including a bizarre fictional ceremony where the land underneath the parkway was passed from the Native Americans to the local government. Merely 2 months after its opening, concerns were raised over traffic congestion on the newly constructed parkway, dispelling any theories that this new road would improve and cut the commute time between Los Angeles and Pasadena, end quote. And finally, a hearty congratulations to Pasadena Media, which is celebrating 38 years of service to the Pasadena community as of December 9th, 2021. They provide an invaluable service to and for and by the community, and we are a much richer community because of it. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of News Wrap Local. Tune in every third Friday of the month at 5 p.m. Learn more at pasadenamedia.org and justindouglaschapman.com. Sign up for my monthly email newsletter to get updates on my work by visiting justinchapman.substack.com. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year.